So I'm going to do this from the start using this document, which I have shared in the folder as well, on how to do the install. The first few steps are going to be VM installs. So if you're not doing it virtually, you're not going to have to do these steps, but if you are, I wanted to have them on here as well. So I'm going to create a new VM. Next, I'm going to call it Moodle Demo, and this will be a Linux install. And down here at the bottom, Ubuntu 64. Next, I'm going to put it on my 2 terabyte SSD on this virtual server. And then I'm going to do a couple configuration things. I never do one CPU. I could do obviously a bunch. I'm going to say 4. And I'm going to make it 100 gig on the hard drive. Obviously, ours is much larger than that for our production one. Down here under CD-ROM, I'm going to change this to ISO, and I'm going to choose what ISO. I'm doing 1604 desktop version. I know 1804 long-term release is out, but 1604 is still 2023. I'm pretty safe with that, and I'm sticking with that one because I know it works. The next thing up here, I'm going to go to VM options and say boot options and force it to go into BIOS and say next. It's going to say, hey, we're good to go. I'm going to say next, and it's making it down here. If I go to Moodle demo and then turn it on, I should come right up into BIOS. It always does that when I'm remote. So it's a really basic BIOS in VMware. I'm just going to move this down and move the CD-ROM before the hard drive and say, actually, I don't even know that I need to do that because there's not going to be anything on the hard drive. So I probably didn't even need to do the BIOS step now that I think about that. So I'm going into Ubuntu 1604 right now. Yes, I want English. I want to go and install it. And you'll see the installation is fairly quick and painless. And we're going to continue in English and download updates in third party while we're doing it and continue. And I'm going to erase the entire disk, install, and confirm it. And yes, we're in New York. And I'm just going to hit enter. You can see it's just off my screen, so I'm just hitting enter to go next. My name's Brian, and this is Moodle demo we're installing. So this password is going to be our initial administrative password. I'm going to just type in admin, and it says that's a terrible password. Fine. I'm going to stick with the terrible password for now. And it's going to go ahead and do its installation. It is really quick, and it'll come right up and tell us when the installation is done. Now, as it's doing that, I'm going to show you this document again. We're going to be following through this document to set up Ubuntu. This area, when we're setting up the database, anytime you see bold and italics, it's a spot where you to change that into your own user and password. Obviously, I don't use Moodle user and Moodle password as my users, but just so you know, that's going to be available to you in that folder where I've got the rest of these documents. And we're almost done. And I forgot to say it, when it's done, you hit restart now. It's going to do a reboot and tell us to remove the CD. Okay, once we come back up, we can log on as our administrative password that we just gave and our administrative user. Now, many Linux users, especially in Ubuntu, never log on as what used to be called, well, what is still called the root user, because of, I'm going to say accounting purposes. I'm removing all these things from the quick launch bar. And I'm going to add one called terminal. Because I'm going to do a bunch of stuff here, and I'm going to lock that to the launcher. So you could always, you can see here to run a command as administrator, type the sudo man sudo root, or use the sudo command. I don't like doing that. I want to log in as root. So the first things you're going to see on this are the things I do to not log on as root. So I'm going to go to that document first. So from here on out, I'm going to be referring to this document that's also in the folder. So I did the CPU. I forgot to increase the video RAM and move my LAN to the 1000E, which I just did because I kept locking up while I was trying to make this video. I've installed the desktop version, so the first thing I'm going to do is do these things right here. So I'm going to basically make it so I can use root. So I'm going to paste those commands in there. It's going to ask for my password. It's going to ask for the new admin password that root is going to use. And I think I may have just messed up my typing. So let's do it again. Okay, so I've got those down. And then I'm going to take the next command, which is going to allow me to log in as root. And then I'm going to take the next one, which I'm going to use to edit one of the files that makes it so I can log in as root again. So when this editor opens up, I'm going to take and I'm going to grab that entire section here. And I missed one of the brackets, but I'll get that when I get there. And I'm going to put that entire section in there that says I'm using the Unity grader, and I can put in a manual password. So I'm going to save that one. No, cancel, save. And what did I do wrong? Close without saving. Oh, I forgot to do the one above it, which was to SU, which says, hey, I want everything else I do, I'm going to do as an administrator, and then I'm going to do that command. Need to follow my own directions a little better. There we go. And now I'm going to do exactly what I said. I'm going to copy this. Because I wasn't editing as an administrator, I couldn't save that document, which wasted everything I just did. But a good example of, see, now you can see the save is not grayed out any longer. So I've done that one. Now I'm going to do this one, which when I go in there, this last line, it says I need to delete, or I'll get an error message every single time I log in as root, which I don't want that either. So now I'm done with all that. I can restart. I can just say reboot now. And it's going to restart us into Ubuntu. And now we can log in as root, which is my preference. So now now this wasn't there before. I can click log in. I can go in as root, put in my root password, and I can now log in as the root user on my machine. So everything I do, I'm doing as an administrator. A little thing I do is I get rid of all this crap on the launcher that I'm never going to use. And then I'm going to add, which I use a lot, terminal. And I'm going to right click and lock that one to the launcher. I'm going to change my display settings. So I go up here and say resolution, and I change, I did the wrong one. There we go. Resolution, and I'm going to change my resolution to 1024 by 768 so I can actually see what I'm doing. There we go. So now I can see all that. And now I'm going to do the rest of those steps. So I'm going to be referring to the document from here on out. We just restarted. So now I'm going to start here, and I'm going to be updating Ubuntu. So I'm going to apt get, and I can just copy the command right there if I wanted to, apt-get update, which is basically going and saying, hey, go out to the servers and make sure I've got all the current stuff. And then I'm going to do apt-get upgrade, which is going to upgrade, and it's going to say, hey, do you want to update everything? And I'm going to say yes. I'm going to pause while it does this. It'll take a couple minutes. Now that Ubuntu is updated, if you're doing it as a VM, you also want to install the VM tools. That makes some things run better. But I'm going to tell you I made a mistake here, and I used a capital A, and Ubuntu is case sensitive. So Okay, so VMware Tools is now installed, and I'm at this point. I switched to small resolution. I'm going to go fix that again. Okay, the next thing it talks about is making sure your IP address is set up right, and either you can do that with your DHCP server, or you can set it as a manual reservation. That's up to you. So the way you do that is just come up here and type network, and you can see network right there, and you can hit that you want to go to options, and then you get the network settings, and you go over to IP4. It's set on DHCP right now. I'm going to just leave it that way since it's not a real server. I'll need to know the IP address of this machine, so I can do that with the term if config, and now I know that this one's on 4.120, well 10.66.4.122 as I go forward to configure my server. But you really do want to make sure you've got it set up as a set name. Then it says change the name of the Ubuntu installation on the following places in etc hostname and etc hosts, and that's just so it shows up correctly on your network. So if I go down here to computer and then into the etc folder, I can just start typing host name. Now I go to hosts, and it's, there we go, host name right there. It's called Moodle Demo. I'm going to leave it as that, but you could change it to something else if you wanted to. And also the host file that we looked at, you can change it there as well. Now we're getting down to the point where we're setting up our server for Moodle itself, so we have to get these dependencies in there. So I'm just going to copy that, and by the way, I right-click in the terminal to paste it. Yes, I want to install all those things in there. And it's going to pop up and ask me what the password is going to be for the MySQL root user. You can use the same one. I'm going to use, for the sake of what I've got down here in my demo, I'm going to use Moodle password. And I have to type it again. Obviously, you wouldn't want to use that password at all. So it just installed those things. And then the next one I'm going to do is that next set of dependencies, which goes all the way down through here. I could have made it all one line if I wanted to. Once those dependencies are done, I'm going to install the other ones. And that will give me everything that I need to install Moodle and have all the character sets and everything set up there when I get to the actual installation of Moodle, because this is really just a setup. Now, the last thing before we install Moodle is to make a database for Moodle, which is also down here in the directions. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to leave that open below me so that I can see it, because I'm not going to copy and paste the first one. So I'm going to do MySQL -u root -p, and then it's going to ask me for the password. I'm going to put Moodle password, which I just put in. And now I'm in MySQL, so I'm going to go ahead and use I can still copy and paste right here. I'm going to create a database called Moodle Demo with this character set, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to really know what all that is. You just need to do it. So I'm going to create that, and then I'm going to create a user called Moodle user, which the Moodle installation is going to use. Then I'm going to grant permissions to Moodle user. And really don't have to do both these, but I'm going to do grant all permissions as well. Just me being safe. And once I'm done, I'm going to quit. Now, there's a couple other things that PHP does by default, and it's down here in the bottom. Basically, to change the max file upload size, because many times in a Moodle installation, your students are going to make something bigger than what the default is. So I'm going to go and edit this file. So I'm going to copy that and paste it in here to open up the editor. That is not, it's moved from there apparently. So let me just do it through browsing through here. Oops. So I'm looking for the PHP Apache file. So let me go find that. There, I just fixed it so it goes to the right place. So you can copy and paste this on there, and then it will open it up. It's in a 7.0 file now. So I'm going to look for post max size in this file. So just Control F to find that. So you can see that the maximum file upload side is 8 meg, and we've had an issue where many times students have done PowerPoints and stuff that are far larger than that. And by the way, this is the max that you could do on the site, not the max you can do in the class. So I'm going to be crazy and say 2 gig is what I set as mine. And then I have to go back to the same place and find upload max file size. You have to set both those things in the same file. And again, I'm going to make it 2048. Again, that's the most that Moodle will allow you to do. That doesn't mean that's the most that you will allow once you set up the administration. I just like open it wide up here, and then I'll throttle it down later. The last thing we've had an issue with is this max execution time. That if it's too small and the gradebook is ginormous, that it can actually make it time out. So we're making it 5 minutes as our, actually it's 10 minutes as our max execution time. That's way past what we've ever had an issue with, but it just kind of solves some future problems that you might have. And that's it. So now that I'm done with all that, I am, where am I at? I gotta save this puppy and close that, and now I can do a restart just Apache. I don't need to restart the whole server, so I can do a service restart. It doesn't like that. I'm going to just do a reboot now because it's the end of the video anyway, and that's everything is set up now for doing our Moodle install itself. As far as Ubuntu goes, the rest of it's step 2 on installing Moodle.